Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a Q&A episode and I'm actually going to add two bonus ones in today because I don't think any of these will take extremely not going to do a super deep dive into any of them. So I'm actually going to go over 5 questions today. But first, before I do that, I just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. So if you found this podcast to be helpful, please do that, and that will help more people get this information there. So let me know. Again, really appreciate anybody that listens, and this will just help the podcast grow even more. Next, I have my free masterclass on body recomp, what it is, how to do it, basically everything you would need to have a body recomp. Again, that is completely free, and the link to that is in the show notes. Next, I have my free masterclass on nutrition periodization, what it is, how to do it, go over each phase, how to set it up, common adjustments, common mistakes. Basically, you would know what to do for each phase there with that. So again, if you are interested in learning more, the link to that is in the show notes. Again, that is completely free as well. Lastly, if you don't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. That's where I'm most active on social media. If you have any questions on the podcast, again, if there's something I go over, you're not sure, you need clarification, maybe you don't agree with what I say, you can reach out to me on there and we can have more conversation. Plus, I just post the most content there. And if you ever have any questions that you want answered on here, that would be the place to go with that. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's question. So first question I have is, I have a friend overweight, but eating 1,000 calories per day. Her metabolism is totally down. She's 51 years old. She doesn't want to lift weight. What can she do to lose weight? Again, so I don't think the person that asked this meant this in any way, but again, people are always looking for special ways to lose body fat. Maybe she didn't mean it this way, but the way it's like, how does she lose weight? How does she lose fat? It's going to be the same for everybody. Again, at the end of the day, you need to be in an energy deficit in order to lose body fat. I'm going to dive into all this in a little bit more detail, but to sum this up, like there is no, in order to lose body fat, to lose weight, you need to be in an energy deficit. And again, this is going to come through a nutrition intervention and probably a little bit of a movement aspect of it, right? Because we need to make sure that we're expending more calories than what we are bringing in. And again, the only way exercise is not the only way to burn calories. People say, oh, they look at their watch and like, oh, I burned 500 calories today, so I can only eat 500, or I have to eat less than 500 calories. And that's not the case. Most people's total daily energy expenditure, again, total daily energy expenditure being how many calories you burn throughout the day, are going to be anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000. Again, it could be more, it could be less. But I would say if you're listening to this, you're probably within that range there. And again, probably more people falling closer to anywhere from like 2,000 to 3,000. You will have some people, again, based on body size and everything like that, may fall under 2,000. Again, in absolute worst case scenarios, under 1,500 calories per day. But movement's a way that we can increase this energy outside of things. And the energy in is the calories that you consume, right? That's pretty self-explanatory there. So in order to lose body fat, the reason that a calorie deficit is needed is because that's going to send the signal to your body that, hey, we are in this deficit of energy. We need to get energy from somewhere. And the best place for your body to get that energy is stored body fat, right? So if you have that deficit, that's where your body's going to start to use your body fat to utilize for energy, right? Again, to maintain just basic bodily functions. Again, to keep up with maybe how much your physical activity. Again, there's energy needed to absorb and digest food. Again, these are all things. There's energy that you need to just do, again, just basic things throughout the day that we don't think of there with that. Your body needs that energy. So really, this calorie deficit from an energy end perspective is going to come from some form of nutrition intervention. There's no way around that. This could be tracking calories. This could be cutting out your certain foods. This can be like where you time your food intake, where you only eat at certain times. Again, that only works if you consume less calories, but that's a way to consume less calories. So there's many different ways that we can get here. I think people often get confused that there's some special way to do this. And really at the end of the day, it's okay, how can we eat less calories throughout the day? And there's going to be certain things that are going to play a bigger role, right? So for example, if you decide to cut out, say, processed food, that's probably where a lot of calories are coming from. That's going to make a big dent, right? If you're like, hey, I'm going to cut out something like fruits, okay, again, that's probably not going to take out a big chunk of calories. So again, I think we need to be smart with what we're deciding to cut out. I personally, with clients, like to have them track their calories because I think that can be a great learning experience and it gives us some data here, right? Whereas these other forms where we just cut out foods, we time foods. Those can, if you're not tracking it, it's still easy to consume calories, which extra calories, which I'll go over. And also, again, calories are the most important here. You'll commonly see. So you're telling me that if I just track calories, I can eat anything and everything I want. That works to an extent, and I do think tracking calories gives you some flexibility. But if you're eating foods that aren't filling, it's going to be a lot harder to maintain any sort of calorie deficit, right? So we do want to also improve our food quality in this process, right? Because somebody here's tracking calories and they think, oh, I can eat anything and everything. You're saying all the calories are the same. And yes, while 1,000 calories is still 1,000 calories, what that food is made up of alters so many things there with that, right? So again, it is also diet quality. So that's the first thing. Okay, this is going to be universal for everybody. Is they have to find a way to get into a there's not to get into a calorie deficit. There's not some special way or some special method to lose body fat. That has to be the case. Again, this shows up with, oh, my friend so-and-so did keto, and I'm just picking on that because that's like the most common diet that you hear, or carnivore or fasting or whatever. And they lost weight. They didn't track their calories. What did they do? They consumed less calories, right? When somebody goes keto, they probably cut out these foods that are high in sugar, high in fat, right? People think it's carbohydrates that are the issue, but it's when they cut out like things like cookies and cakes and foods that again are yes, they have sugar, they have carbs in them, but they also are very high in fat as well too. That's that magic combination. They cut those out and it's okay. Yeah, you're consuming less calories. So people hear that and they think that they did some special thing or there's some special magic to that particular diet. Hey, I tracked my calories and it didn't work, but somebody did keto and they lost weight and they found a way to get into an energy deficit by doing that. There's that. And I'm going to dive into tracking and how this can potentially, there can be some issues here. But my next thing is her metabolism is totally down. So first, and it says 51-year-old female, our metabolism doesn't slow down as we age, right? And let me rephrase that. It doesn't slow down really until your 60s. Maybe there's in your mid, late 60s, there's maybe a little bit of a slowdown a little bit. However, the big thing is that people's activity levels and muscle mass decrease and that seems to be a bigger issue and the bigger indicator of their metabolism slowing down. Not necessarily, oh, hey, you're getting older, so it's going down, right? It's typically, hey, you're moving less overall and you're losing muscle in this process, right? And these are going to be things that can impact your metabolism there with that. So that's the next thing is we need to stop blaming age for our metabolism because that is less of a factor than what you're actually doing, right? Those are the big things. Next, there's some things that can lower your total daily energy expenditure. However, this doesn't mean that, so again, that's where people will commonly say, oh, my metabolism is damaged. Your metabolism isn't damaged. It's just basically adapted to what you've been doing to it. So the good news here is you can improve this, right? We can get things back on track. So your metabolism doesn't necessarily get damaged. So again, what are some things here that could potentially hurt this? Obviously, if your lifestyle's out of whack, you have a high stress lifestyle, you get poor sleep. This is going to start to have impacts on like insulin resistance. This is going to start to have impacts on your thyroid, which are going to be things that can potentially lower your total daily energy expenditure. Now we're talking like, hey, if your lifestyle's out of whack, you're not moving much now and you don't have muscle, this is going to impact your hormones, right? Your body's going to adapt to these things and we start to see things get out of whack. And this can potentially lower your total daily energy expenditure if we're not careful. So we need to make sure that those things are on track there with that. That's the first place. Next, on top of this, when somebody is overweight, they're also from the satiety standpoint, there's this kind of dysregulation, this dysregulated appetite where people's hunger and satiety is just off, right? So they have a hard time getting full. They always feel hungry. This is where it's like, oh, hey, you just need to eat less. It can be not detrimental, but it cannot be good advice for some people because they have all these issues going on to where they just can't manage their hunger. They just don't ever feel full. And that's going to be really hard to stick to a calorie deficit. So again, we have that going on, especially the more overweight you are, the more like metabolic issues you have and whatnot, this is going to start to show up. Okay. So I just wanted to go over those things first because I think it's super important to make sure that we understand that, hey, it's not because of your age, it's probably the things that you're doing. And there's that. Next, I want to go over she's eating 1,000 calories per day and not losing weight. First, you need to look at these things that I just talked about, right? Especially making sure that you're active. You need to make sure that sleep and stress are on point because again, those are going to have trickle down effects on your total daily energy expenditure. So there's that. But next, again, this is a common thing I see where it's like, oh, I'm only eating X amount of calories per day and I'm not dropping weight. And unfortunately, in most cases, 9.99999 times out of 10, you're just over consuming calories, right? So again, this is somebody that is in the situation is going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, next, I got to find something else. They're going to completely ignore this. But look, you need to listen to this. It's super important because just because it's simple in terms of, hey, you need to find ways to eat less. Again, it can be a very challenging thing to do. It's not easy, right? So I understand that. So I want to make that clear here. But again, at the end of the day, this person, I guarantee if we looked, is probably not consuming 1,000 calories. Now, there's two things. She could be consuming 1,000 calories a couple days a week. She could be tracking 1,000 calories, but probably not eating 1,000 calories, right? I would be very shocked if somebody was actually eating 1,000 calories and not dropping weight. Again, people will be like, I just need to eat more and then I'll lose more weight, right? Or am I just not eating enough? And is that why I'm not losing weight? And again, that's not the case. Now, indirectly, you not eating enough in terms of, hey, you're trying to eat 1,000 calories could be something that was really hard for you to stick to. If you have 1,000 calorie goal and you eat 800 in one meal, now you're like, screw it, this is too hard. And then because of that, because you're setting the goal too low of how many calories you need to eat, it's like hard for you to actually stick to there. Where sometimes what you'll see is, hey, let's raise up your calorie goal to 1,500. That's more manageable for somebody. And they actually can stick to that. And then they start losing weight because they have a little bit more of they don't get in that like all or nothing mindset towards it. And then they actually throughout the week end up consuming closer to say 1,500. Whereas if you set your goal at 1,000 and you get to 800 in one meal, you're like, you know what, screw it. Then you have the couple 3,000 calorie days in there. Now you're way over your caloric intake, right? So there's that. But again, from a 1,000 calorie standpoint, again, there's probably some tracking. We're either and this is again probably something that's going on, is they're just they're underreporting their caloric intake, whether it be on purpose or on accident. Again, it's tracking calories is a skill, so it's going to take some time to develop. Most times when I get a new client, they're underreporting how much they're eating because they don't realize some of these things have more calories than they think, right? They're usually a couple hundred. And then you do this multiple times a day, and now you're looking at, hey, you're 500 to 1,000 calories under, right? So again, like, bet if we looked, we went in through her food log and we looked, she's probably has some foods in there where it's like, hey, you're probably consuming closer to 2,000 calories. So again, there can be tracking mistakes. That can be the first thing, just from, again, a lack of skill there with that. But also, if you go out to eat a lot, just because something says it has 500 calories in it, it probably doesn't, and it probably has more than that. So if you're consuming a lot of foods out, again, you're probably underreporting how many calories you're actually having. And then again, some people don't think about supplements. There's many other things. They don't think about drinks. And now they see, oh crap, all right, I'm actually 1,000 calories under or I'm 1,000 calories over what I thought I was, right? So again, it's developing that skill. But then on top of it, not only the skill aspect of it, but nutrition labels can also be off by up to 20, 25% up or down, right? So again, so it's not an exact science. So if you're in 1,000 calories, not dropping weight, again, I would look at your movement, and then I also would look at your tracking skill and how many times you're going out to eat, see if there's anything that you're missing there with that. So again, like, the chances of her actually eating 1,000 calories, I think, are slim to none. Again, look at those things there with that. And also, again, just understand a deficit in today's world is just super challenging for all the reasons I mentioned. And again, with hunger issues of potentially being overweight, again, the tracking skill side of things, again, things not being as accurate as we think they are. Also, on top of it, the lifestyle that we live in today's modern world is, again, going to be something that's usually a higher stress lifestyle and poor sleep, right? That's basically what the environment is. If you're not careful with it, if you do stuff, that's typically what you're going to see happen there with that, right? And that again can lower your total daily energy expenditure. Now, the only thing that I really have here that frustrates me with this is she doesn't want to lift weights, right? Now, again, lifting weights isn't going to be something that is going to directly cause you to lose weight, right? But there's a lot of indirect effects of weight training that's going to be helpful from a losing weight, losing body fat perspective. So first, let's take it from a body composition standpoint. If you're dropping weight and you're lifting weights, your body's more likely to pull that from body fat than muscle, right? We do not want to lose muscle in the weight loss process. You're just going to make this even more challenging. So that's the first thing that we want to do there, is make sure that we're doing it for that reason, right? Otherwise, you're going to just be losing weight, maybe losing a little bit of muscle in the process if you're not weight training, and that's going to make you hungrier. And again, that's not great for your overall health. And just from a look standpoint, you're not going to feel good. And then a weight management standpoint, you're more likely to see weight regain following that. So that's the first thing. Next, muscle is very good at utilizing the food that you give it, right? So basically it improves your insulin sensitivity, right? And again, when we're overweight, you're at a higher risk of insulin resistant. And so this can help just your body utilize the nutrients that you give it much better as well too, right? Again, that's another important aspect of this. And again, all the other numerous health benefits of lifting weights for muscle and strength there with that. That would be something where I understand that you don't want to do it, but again, you're really shooting yourself in the foot there. And here's the thing, you don't need to sit there and go to the gym 5 days a week, 6 days a week and lift for an hour at a time. You literally, if you're somebody who's like totally against weight training, which I feel like if you listen to this, you're probably not, but if you know somebody who is, you can tell them, hey, like you only need to do 15 to 30 minutes 2 times a week. And that's going to be a great starting point. And you're going to probably, especially if they've never weight trained before and based on them not wanting to lift weights, they probably never have, you're going to see a ton of benefits from just doing that. So again, I would really push you to do that. And this is what frustrates me more about this is that with me being like, hey, I want to build my wealth, but I don't really want to save any money though. How can I build my wealth? You're out of luck there with that. So this that frustrating thing of like people want something, but then they want to do it their way and they don't want to do certain things. And that can get frustrating. That's my thoughts on this. Again, I think that in these situations, they're probably over consuming calories, whether they are doing it on purpose or not. And again, we need to make sure we lift weights for all the things I talked about. And again, your metabolism is not slowing down as you age. So hopefully that was insightful for some people there with that. All right, next question for the day is, I know the anabolic window has been largely debunked based on meta-analysis. Do you still think there's benefit to getting protein and calorie closer to the end of your workout? And I do. This is something where, okay, so we know that your total daily protein intake for the day is priority number one and the most important thing. And if you nail that, timing becomes less important. But I think generally speaking, if we were to break it down from there, like I do think it's generally a good idea to get protein relatively soon after your workout. And again, this doesn't have to be 30 minutes after, or you have to slam that protein shake before you get into your car. But I do think, what somewhere between 1 and 2 hours around your workout afterwards is generally going to be a good idea for most people. And again, it's just a safe bet, right? And you can use this window as a time to help increase your overall protein intake for the day, right? So it kills two birds with one stone. So I think generally speaking, yes, you should still, it's still generally a good idea to get protein in after around your workout. I think that, again, it's just a safe bet and there's really no downsides to doing it, but you just also don't need to overly stress about it either, right? So it's finding that happy medium there with it. But yeah, I think a lot of people could take this, oh, timing doesn't matter, where now they go multiple hours around without getting protein in around their workout. And I don't think that's necessarily the greatest idea there with that. All right, next question. Would 7 by 9, so 7 sets of 9, and 6 by 10, so 6 sets of 10, yield similar hypertrophy? I think we're thinking too much here on specific numbers. I think if both sets were taken within 0 to 3 reps from failure, then yes, I do think that they would yield similar hypertrophy. I also, what's the exercise that you're doing here, making sure that it's a good exercise for building muscle. Now, if one was taken to 5 RAR and the other was taken to 1, then I think the one taken closer to failure would yield more hypertrophy, right? So again, this is where the intensity is the most important. Like we need to make sure that intensity is there. We need to make sure that it's somewhat challenging, right? Because you could sit here and do 7 by 9, 6 by 10, and again, one's like super far away from failure, the other one's closer. I think in that exact moment, if we were to go 1 to 1, that one closer to failure is going to yield more hypertrophy, right? So it's less about that than, again, you'd be split. It's more about the intensity than it is that. Now, I think if both were taken the same, and again, which one, I'm thinking maybe the one that is 7 by 9 would potentially yield just a little bit more hypertrophy because you're getting a whole extra set in there with that. But again, I think the most important thing is the intensity. Also, what I want to hit on here with this is at the end of the day, if you want to build muscle, it comes down to what you do over time. So yes, we could sit here and talk about, hey, if you did this versus that, maybe that's going to yield a little bit more hypertrophy. But if that's like the only day you work out, you don't do anything else. Well, it's like, or if your overall like volume isn't there for the entire week, or again, you're not consistent with your training, that's the thing that you need to focus on more. Or if your nutrition's way off, or again, your overall volume, like those things are going to be more important than one exact workout, right? I wouldn't overly stress. I would look at like the big picture with building with muscle growth, because that's ultimately the most important. Let's focus on, okay, what's the most maximal thing I can do to build muscle? And instead, what is the most you can do over time? What's the thing that's going to keep you most consistent over time? Because that's ultimately what's going to be more important here. So again, a good question and a way to think about this a little bit differently. But I do think that, again, what you do over time really is the most important here when it comes to building muscle. All right, so next question. Should you only count animal proteins toward protein goals? And no, I don't think you should only count animal proteins towards your goals, right? I think you should count all protein towards your goals. Now, in saying this, is if most of your protein comes from sources outside of things like whey, dairy, animal proteins, then you may want to increase your overall protein intake for the day, okay? So if a big chunk of it is say like collagen or plant-based protein, you may want to have a little bit more protein overall. So say you're somebody who's 125 pounds. If you get 100 grams of protein, say 100 to 120, and most of it is again from those sources, I think you're good to go. Now, if you're that weight and 20 of it's from those sources and the rest is from say like collagen, plant-based protein, then you probably want to bump that up a little bit more. Okay. So like a common thing I'll see is, you look at someone's food log and it's, they're getting 60 grams of collagen protein a day. It's like, all right, we're probably going to want to make sure we get other sources of protein in there. So if 60 out of 100 was collagen, I'd be okay. We want to bump up those protein levels, and we probably want to get it from again more like animal proteins or again plant-based sources as well too is fine there with that. And having a kind of blend of where those are coming from would be super important. So again, the more protein you have, the less concerning this is, and the more diversity there is, the less concerning this is from that perspective. But again, you do want to count it all. It's just make sure that the more it comes from, say, things outside of animals, protein sources, or again, whey or dairy or anything like that, your protein number probably needs to be a little bit higher. Again, this is from a muscle building standpoint. If we're just talking overall health, you probably have a little bit more wiggle room here. Again, we just don't want to go super, super low with it. But from a muscle building body composition standpoint, we probably want to go a little bit higher there with that. So hopefully that answers that. Let me know if you have any follow-ups to that. All right. So best dumbbell tricep movements. And this is my bonus one for the day. So I really like a JM press. That's one that I have really been programming in a lot for clients. It seems to be better on the elbows, but for some people, it can potentially impact things. Dumbbell JM press is awesome. We have any type of skull crusher type movement that allows for a nice range of motion at the bottom. So anything that you can get a good stretch in those triceps, I think is solid. So that's a good one. And then a single overhead tricep extension exercise is also great as well too, right? Where you can do anything with this. Those would be some things. I think with triceps, I think they benefit really well from cables, machines, and like a Smith machine. But if you only have dumbbells, these would be the ones that I would base their kind of training around with that. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions on this or if you have any that you would add in. So that's it for this episode. I hope this was a good one. If you have any questions on it, let me know. Lastly, if you are interested in figuring out which dumbbell exercises you should include, why you're not dropping weight, again, then my free 30-minute strategy call is for you. The link to that is in the show notes. If you're interested in learning more, again, you can reach out, let me know. But that is it for today. If you have any other questions, let me know and I will chat with you next time.